another community forum. I'm your host, Byron Campbell, and of course, our co-host is Chris Diali. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Byron. Good evening to our viewers. We're happy to be around again this Wednesday on the various platforms that you're tuning in on, and we're hoping that we can stimulate thought again this evening.
Yeah, welcome to all. Chris, what's on our mind? First of all, let me say that our guest tonight, later on, will be Dr. Justin Pierre, statistician. We're looking at what the numbers say, what the data says from the political perspective in terms of that. So we have an interesting second segment. But Chris, the rains, the weather, extreme weather on our agriculture and infrastructure, the slides we had in within a 6-hour period or less, 2 months of rain, average rainfall, enormous amount of rains. I've never seen flooding. Residents in River Road who've lived there all their lives have said, look, this is the most flooding or the most water we've seen in our waterways, And there's been a lot of debate about the walls or the structures that was erected to contain the river in River Road, but we'll come to that. But around the island, Chris, serious flooding. We've had a death, most unfortunate, and we have to extend our deepest sympathies to the family of this young woman. Very, very unfortunate, But what is driving this weather, Chris? It's happening, but this year, 2024, is on record to be the hottest year on record. Hottest. It means that we are going to be having extreme weather. So according to the expert, we have to expect more of this type of weather. So how do we mitigate? What do we do to ensure that when this weather comes, we can better manage the weather, adapt to it, so to speak, our drainage systems, our rivers, their flow. But very, very, very unfortunate and very costly weather yesterday, Chris. Schools.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things we could point to.
Yeah.
When you look at the river, let me start with the River Road.
Yeah.
Because I looked at the videos and so on. And two things are happening in the River Road context. The capacity to handle the volume of water. But remember, that comes from way up, and we're building more and more structures.
Up into the forest, up into the hillside.
And the velocity of the water coming off drives and so on is far greater than it used to be before.
Yeah.
And more water is coming down into the river as a result of that from the house, because the houses are catching more water through their roofs and so on. But the walls that was built in River Road seem to have done their work. What happened is when the water reached the Steels Bridge, that is where all the debris and things, the water just came over the bridge, entered the roads, and entered on the steel side.
So blockage.
Blockage.
Yeah.
And that seemed to have created a lot of the problem, the flooding in the stadium. I don't know if the water, based on the videos, I didn't see the water climb over the walls. But the volume was so great that it went to the sides when they got the blockage. So that was the River Road context.
Yeah.
Of course, the engineers will have to look at it again, understanding now the capacity of what has to be done, and so on. I extend sympathies to the death of the young lady as well, because I think that was so unfortunate. But Byron, I think the critical thing here is that the temperature this year is going to be one of the hottest years. The extremes in weather is going to continue.
Exactly.
As we see, this hurricane season have not ended yet.
That's correct.
And we almost at the end of November, we still have a major hurricane in the Western Atlantic.
That's correct.
That's doing all kind of craziness and interfering with Cuba and Jamaica and
still
Mexico,
active
and still very active. And we have to pay attention to that. How we mitigate is going to be the issue. We have COP29 going on. We have the loss and what they call the fund?
It's called the Loss and Damage Fund.
The Loss and Damage Fund.
And it's inadequate.
It's inadequate. They have a few $100 million in it. And we just have to say, for SIDS, we are feeling the brunt of these climatic changes that we see.
Small island states.
Yes. And we have to find ways. Our island is so small. And the other thing you didn't mention is the quantity of slippages that we had.
The slides.
The slides. And, to go and look at the various areas on the western side, the eastern side, and so on, to put up these wire meshes to help prevent the slides and so on, to not damage infrastructure, as you say, the roads and so on, is not a cheap affair, and hence we need to get funds out of COP to deal with these kind of mitigation measures. I can't say we go open the drain in Grand Anse-Moore. Where we going to the drain? Right in the road, everything right there on the side.
That's correct.
Right? Probably we could talk about cleaning them more often. When you see what's happening in Radisson and the floods there, and of course the regular thing in Montrouge, and all the things in the bridge by Woburn, this is a regular thing for us. The issue is we don't have space to make them wider and bigger. We probably could talk about cleaning them better.
Better, yes.
So that
taking out the debris,
Right.
even the drains on our roads, they're not being maintained to the extent that they should be maintained. But let's go back to the COP29, Chris, because this is an important conference. Our Prime Minister is there as a heads. Our Prime Minister is there. One of the big main matter is climate finance. That is different to the loss and damage fund. This is climate finance at the Broadway, where I think it's $100 billion. Is presently that's going to run out in a while. But what's interesting here is that China and the Gulf states, oil-producing Gulf states, are exempt from contributing to these funds because they are still considered developing nations. And the US and Europe are in fact arguing that they should be contributing to this fund. And I want to agree with that because they are contributing to a lot of the climate change that we're seeing, and they have the money. And they have the money. Yes. The other big issue on the COP26, Chris, is the fossil fuel transition. COP29 is the fossil fuel transition. You know, at what rate is it transitioning? What are the rules governing it? So there's a lot. One of the big thing and is also the rules for carbon market. Carbon market is like in Guyana, because of the forestry, which sink a lot of carbon into the forest, they can get credit for this. So financing for it. So, on, so they want that. And you mentioned this, the money for loss and damage, like what we're experiencing now. You know,
I think the
so this meeting is important. Exactly, and this meeting is crucial. And one of the other thing is what they call boosting transparency. A lot of countries have not reported. The deadline for reporting on what you've been doing and going forward is the end of the year. But they are hoping that countries in this conference will submit their plans. But a lot of countries have not done this. So there is worry about the transparency aspect, you know.
But I have no faith in the COPs.
Yeah.
We go into the COP 29, whatever, and we promise a lot of things.
And you know, 40 to 50,000 people attend these conference, this conference.
Nothing comes out except a lot of nice words and promises, but in real action, we don't see anything coming out of the COP. So I'm a cynic when it comes to these COPs. But the other thing I want to highlight that we didn't talk about is Nawassa and the water.
Yes.
With all this water that came, it damaged infrastructure for Nawassa. You have to go on block dams.
Yes.
It's a costly exercise for us to get the water back up. Nawassa is building storage, so you might have storage. Some people may get water back up and so on. But when so much water falls in such a short space of time, the damage that is done to the infrastructure of the Nawassa is significant.
Yes.
And that is something where COP and these things need to come in, because we need...
That's a cost for us.
That's a cost.
For, you know, schools were closed today, some early in the day, because there's no water.
That's right.
You understand? And workplaces, so there's a cost.
I have workers coming late who couldn't come because they just didn't have water to do what they have to do. And it's just, I mean, we just keep talking and we don't talk. And then you have issues that, you know, that when water is threatened like that, you have sewer issues developing.
Yes.
Because the sewer and the water are connected. We have an issue in La Colombe we could talk about with the sewer that has been ongoing for a while. Apparently, the design for the system wasn't done properly to facilitate the people in La Colombe, and there's a continuous problem, of course, that has to be dealt. All of that requires money. All of that requires money coming from the coffers of Nawassa.
As you're talking about money, Grenada, we have just concluded, the concluding ceremony for our 50th anniversary was last weekend, I think, weekend before. So a year of celebrations, costing in the vicinity of $22 million. Was it well spent? Was it justified? Did we get value for money? What was the takeaways? $22 million is a lot of money. We had fun, we had a good time, but the question is, if you go to your donors asking for money and you said you spent $22 million on a celebration, how do you think they look at you? Positively or otherwise? But it's a 50th anniversary. It's a major event, occasion for us. And I think it was important that we paused. We do a check on where we are, where we've come from. And I think the important part of it was in going forward. But I think as I reflect on it, if you ask me, or the average person, I think, what did you learn in that period in terms of the next 25 years? Where are we going? What is it going to look like? What's going to shape it? What's going to influence it? I'm not sure that we achieved that aspect of it in the celebrations. We celebrated, yes, and we had fun. But in terms of the conscious aspect of it, I think it was lacking, Chris.
Well, I mean, let me start off by saying that I didn't think 22 million was too much to spend for the recognition of that milestone.
Yeah.
And the history behind it and where we came from and where we are today.
Yeah.
The activities was a lot. I think it was done in every parish. Everybody had an opportunity from a parish standpoint and from a community level to understand what it is we were celebrating and why we were celebrating it, which is more important.
Yeah.
I think the Prime Minister gave an excellent speech when he was in the Trade Center talking about the next 50 years and where we'd like to see the country go and what we need to do and how the people need to change, what we need to, our mindset, what needs to be adjusted in order to make ourselves truly independent, food security and all of these things, and the use of technology and all of that. I would hope that the committee will continue to be set in place. Why? I think a report needs to be given to Parliament and to the country as to how the money was spent and the positives and areas where they need to improve and do things differently. So the shortcomings and how we could adjust it. I don't think the forward-looking should have a we have the 2035
plan. Yes.
And I think going forward for from this independence celebration is how we could take that and incorporate it in the 2035 plan and keep in forefront.
So you're suggesting that the committee should stay in place?
Yes.
And we have to give kudos to the volunteers because a lot of the people who work volunteered their service for the occasion. I mean, I would like to see the follow-up part where the determination of heroes, that process comes through. I'm not sure if it's a committee that's responsible for this exercise.
And I mean, we need to keep celebrating ourselves. It doesn't have to be on independence. Generally, we need to keep celebrating ourselves as people. We have done a lot. I think we could do a lot more. Excuse me, the major thing being how we adjust our attitude to work.
Bottom line, you think the $22 million was not adequate, but it was justified.
Yes,
okay,
and I think the report, if it comes to Parliament,
the report
would further
concretize
what we did and what was achieved.
Big news this week. We had Dr. Karani James being awarded, well, of course, a Doctor of Laws, a LLD, as it's called, for excellence in athletics. I think he's a great person. I mean, when you look at his humility and his accomplishments with that, I mean, he spoke eloquently at this. You heard him.
Speech.
And I was moved, and I think there is reasons, Chris, for us to be proud.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, understanding the humble beginnings of Mr. James, Dr. James.
Dr. James,
And what needs to be highlighted here for every young person, every Grenadian, is his commitment and his resilience to overcome obstacles and get to the pinnacle of his career and what he was doing. And I think that must serve as some sort of incentive for young people who's trying to, coming from similar conditions and trying to see when they have difficulty that they don't give up. And he's definitely a... If
he comes to Grenada and says, look, I want to be here, what role do you see him playing?
Well, I think the most important role is, I would not like to see him engage in too much administrative work. I think he needs to be a community person. And go out to communities, go out to...
As an example.
Children, yes,
of
various age groups. A motivator. A motivator, a speaker, or it's called a motivation speaker. So I think that is where I see him as a major role. And he seems to want to do that as well. Because every time he comes back, he goes back to his village, he mixes and thing with everybody, and
I'm so proud
happy
of
to
this.
have conversations
I mean,
with
this
them. you
man,
know.
he moves me. Chris, but alongside the graduation, because this was a UE regional global graduation ceremony, and what was interesting is that, particularly for Grenadian graduates, it was as much as 80% female. And they distinguished themselves in terms of first class honors. You know, I mean, I want to say congratulations, but aside but that, I was asking myself, where are the males? Should I be concerned? Should we be concerned?
We should be
this?
concerned. I think
Yeah.
it continues to show, and it's not happening now. It's been happening over the years.
Yeah.
You go to secondary school,
Yeah.
and then the female gender, of course, dominates from an educational point of view. Even in the private sector, when you see what's happening with where women are breaking the glass ceiling in the different functions and areas of
Yeah.
expertise,
Yeah.
it is more women than men. And the question has to be, what has happened to our men? Why are our men sidelined? Why are our men just liming on the blocks and not taking a more active role in their education? And I think, I'm trying to remember who it was that said that, you know, your only way out of difficult circumstances and your true freedom is through education.
Through education.
And
So,
it don't matter if it's male or female, we have to educate ourselves.
kudos to the
And
young,
get-
kudos to the young women.
Yeah,
Chris,
yeah.
as we on education, a lot of our graduates, a lot of our people are migrating, qualified, migrating to the United States and other countries, but primarily the United States, at a great expense to the state of Grenada, because as you will know, that all our education in Grenada, most of it, all of it, they're subsidized by the state, by the government of Grenada. Secondary school is free. We give multiple scholarships. And so when you migrate to the United States, the state having fully contributed to your education, you're contributing to the United States economy. The question is, how do we continue financing our own educational system? You know, we are producing at a cost, and then these persons are going away and contribute to another society where they are working and being taxed. One person raised this, there should be a taxation that is returned to Grenada. In other words, some arrangement between the states, between the government of the United States and whichever state, Grenada, whichever state that person comes from, that finance their education. You know what it costs to educate for a degree in the United States, Chris? I looked it up. 182,000 US dollars. That's 490,000 Eastern Caribbean dollars. Almost $500,000. And we are giving that. That's the value of the educated person in terms of the education that goes into the United States or another country to work. There must be some return. Remittances doesn't touch that. There must be, how do we finance our education system going forward? It's expensive.
I did say
And
to
we are
you,
not having the benefits of the persons who are educated here.
I did say to you in a previous program,
Yeah.
and I use the nursing
Fraternity,
profession
yes.
as an example.
Right.
Nurses is in high demand. We can't keep our nurses because
Okay.
we can't keep our nurses because of the situation of emoluments, the standard, and
Yeah.
so on. So I always say, Byron, if we have 100 nurses to train, and our system could take 20, we sell the next 80. And that sounds crude, but meaning that if they want RNs, registered nurses, and the degree in RN, or work ethic as Caribbean people and what we do, and the United States want to take 80, we sell them at a cost. Listen, for you to get 80, it costing me $1,000 to train this nurse for 2-3 years. You have to pay me $3,000 to get this nurse. And when you get them, you set up arrangements that they go into a particular hospital, this, that, you give them this, whatever needs to be done on the legal side, and commercialize it. Because that is the only way. If we get 3,000, we take and we put it back into the program. So the program continues to grow and we continue to do more and more. We need to start commercializing. For years, think about our population. Our population have not moved
Why it does not move?
because we ship out all our people.
Exactly.
Right? When they, and we
Exactly.
give them scholarships, we don't. The bonding has been weak. They're trying to
It's
improve
weak.
it now.
It's weak.
But
It's weak.
the point I'm making is, if we have to qualify people here and get them to degree level through scholarships and whatever, and you want to take it, it must come at a cost. So we need to change the thinking, in my view,
Absolutely,
of how we do it. And remember, in the budget, education has got a substantial chunk.
Of course.
Right, because
We're
of
not, are we not having the benefit
teachers
of
and
it,
this and that,
you
and
know?
our young people and what we teach. And we have a relatively high education system here. I always say the quality of our educational system is pretty high. It could compete with anywhere else.
Chris.
And so I want us, when we come back, to talk something
we
missed.
Okay, we have to take a short break.
Public
now,
transport and what happened in this flooding.
We have to take a short break.
Yes.
Viewers, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Knockout is on. Don't miss a game.
This holiday season, Blast is bringing you the biggest celebration of the year. Merry Blastmas and a happy new win. Merry Blastmas play today, cash prize once win away. Brand new car, a dream come true, 6 days and vouchers for you. Play at Blast and scan your QR code for a chance to win amazing prizes. Merry Blastmas, make it fun, happy new win for everyone. Visit Blast Gaming now. Merry Blastmas and a happy new win. You must be 18 and over.
Welcome to the future of shopping with Real Value IGA mobile app. Now, your favorite supermarket is right in your pocket. Whether you're a student, a busy parent, or in the diaspora shopping for friends and family at home, a Yahtzee or a Grenadian, our mobile app has you covered. Shop online with our mobile app from anywhere and enjoy free delivery to St. George and St. David. Or you can pick up your groceries in-store, hassle-free. Convenience, savings, and a seamless experience in Grenada. All right here at your fingertips. Download the Real Value IGA mobile app and start shopping today. Real Value IGA, bringing the supermarket to you.
Welcome back, viewers, to MTV Community Forum. Host Byron Campbell, our co-host Chris Dialli, of course. As I told you earlier on, our special guest, Dr. Justin Pierre, will be joining us momentarily. Chris, before we go to Dr. Pierre, there was an issue on yesterday relating to the inclement weather, transportation.
Yes.
Public transportation, well, private too, but public transportation was not available to take hundreds and hundreds of workers home. That was not a good thing. The question is, how do we resolve this?
Yeah, I mean, Byron, that to me stood out because you have workers, for example, that were dismissed early.
Yeah.
And early being in 3:30 in some places, so they could get home and check their surroundings, make sure their family is safe.
Yeah.
But they couldn't get home.
Yeah.
Because the buses stopped running very early,
Yeah.
the public buses. And here again is the argument for having government-controlled public transport alongside the private buses.
Yeah.
Because in a situation where the state is running these buses, they will have to stay on the road, not forgetting the impediments that they will meet, the slides and so on. Outside of that, people were just stranded. And I mean, we must find a better way to do that. And of course, in my view, having public transport alongside private transport is the first way.
So you're making a strong recommendation for public transport.
Correct. I mean, we spoke about all the other
About this
advantages
before,
of it,
yeah.
but this is one in a crisis
Yeah.
where we need to
Well,
have.
you saw the need for it,
need for it,
absolutely.
absolutely.
But having said that, Chris, I still want to congratulate the bus private owners because they came back. The acting prime minister may have appealed to them to come back. But Chris, before we go to Dr. Peer, just two things I want to make. I heard the leader of the opposition, Dr. Mitchell, making two comments, and I want to. One of them he spoke about was our prime minister attending the Montmorris breakfast by helicopter. You know, given the impression that he helicoptered into the breakfast, you know, but that's false, really. He did come into the breakfast by helicopter, but the Dowden helicopter services, which is a new attraction being added to Grenada, and very important, they had a soft opening. And because he's from Montmorris, and it coincided with the breakfast that day. And the Prime Minister was invited to come and experience the ride. So it was in this sense, it was a promotion which was positive, I thought. And it not had to do with he's always in the sky and coming in by helicopter.
We just politicize,
That's not
we
so.
just politicize everything.
The other thing, Chris, was that at one of the last zonal meetings, the leader of the opposition was there, and he was very emotionally upset because one of his best close friends had just passed a couple hours before the hospital, and I could understand being upset. But to say that in the manner in which he died, that people were dying like flies, I thought was inappropriate and just out of order, in my view. That I think he should have been more responsible. Because certainly this didn't happen. There was no way that I learned, or it appears that the hospital was responsible for his death. So to relate his passing and to say more than once that people are dying like flies, giving the impression in the hospital, I thought was just poor politics in my view. And he needed to control his emotions better.
A statesman of Dr. Mitchell's
Mitchell, yeah.
experience should know a little better.
and-
But then when we start to play politics, it helps.
Exactly.
What is
But
going
in
on.
health, I want to, just before we go to Dr. Peer, to say that the General Hospital achieved something positive last week. And we need to say that they were certified by PAHO, the Pan American Health Organization, as a baby-friendly health facility. And that's important because they would have to go through a number of stages and training in breastfeeding, methodology, and so on to achieve this. So kudos to the staff there, particularly in the children wing of the hospital. So all is not bad. And
Yeah,
we should-
remember
Yes.
that is coming from the platform and the context that
Yeah.
we had some deaths of
Yeah,
babies earlier
exactly,
in the year,
yes.
I believe.
So
That,
I just want to
the
congratulate
fact
them
fact
for
that they have
Yeah.
achieved that is
They're
excellent.
doing good. We should say they're doing good. Dr. Pierre. Chris, you go with him.
Yeah, I don't know if Dr. Pei wants me to introduce him again and to read out his bio.
Say
But
something.
All I will say
Are
about
you-
Dr. Pei is that
Are you? Thank you, everyone. How are you, Brother Campbell and Brother Diali? How are you?
yes, we are good,
Yes,
Dr.
we
Pei.
are
I am
good,
only going to
Dr.
say
Pei.
one
I
thing
am only
about
going
your
to say
bio
one
here.
thing about
Dr.
your
Pei is
bio
one of the
here.
most
Dr. Pei is one of the most
experienced person when it comes
experienced
to
person when it comes
labor
to
market and migration issues. And he has one of the largest database as it relates to people unemployed, underemployed, and so on in his consultancy business. And he has branched off outside of his bio here. He has branched off into being a statistician on politics, and Grenada politics in particular. And his predictions for the last election was almost bang on, very accurate. So, you know, Dr. Pei has a lot of experience in this issue, particularly with our country, him being Grenadian as well. And I want to welcome you again, Dr. Pei, to our show. And I know tonight we're going to be talking more politics and your recent findings in your recent stats that you did. And I have some printouts here. But I want to start off with from the last election and 2020 elections. And, you know, one of the graphs I am looking at from 2020 is the one that spoke to concern of voters in the 2020 elections. And we know one of the big ones was pension, healthcare,
Yes.
health insurance, skills training, the fishing industry, youth unemployment and safety of the country. I highlight those because I looked at your graphs and those that were the ones that peaked. And I want to ask if you believe, outside of pension, because I know we took care part of the pension issue, if you believe these are still burning issues in Grenada and what the average Grenadian citizen is still concerned about.
Okay. Well, once again, to the viewers, I want to say thank you very much for having me on your show, Brother Chrisiali and Brother Campbell. As I said, I am Grenadian, born in the Fontenoy village, so in the Northwest constituency. So, as I said, I always tell my friend, Grenadian politics have always been a part of our life. My parents were very involved in politics, so even though I've never voted in my life, but I still, as a citizen, I'm very concerned about our politics. With regard, just to one little plug, as I said, I work for a company by the name of Dunn, Pierre, Barnett and Company Canada Limited, and we are a research firm. We conduct data. We're a data collection company really, in the labor market, of course, first, but also in data collection. So we specialize in collecting data on what is called the BIPOC population, that is Black, Indigenous, people of color. So we basically have done that for many years. We have done that for many years. And what we have also done, we are more or less specialized in collecting data on the voting population. So we have a very good idea of, we collect maybe most of the voting population of the Eastern Caribbean or the Caribbean. And so we have a very good idea of that. And also just that what we have done in Grenada, we have done that in many other countries. In fact, our prediction in Grenada was not our first, second, or third, or fourth predictions. We have done that many times. And just to wanted to add, even though we made the prediction in Grenada, our prediction was not totally correct. But our main goal is to take that kind of data, bring it into North America. So that's basically what we do. With regard to your question, in terms of what some of the main concerns, actually, obviously we know that from the 2022 elections, pension payment was the most critical issue. You could not win the election without really adequately addressing the pension payment, and we see that the pension payment was paid, even though we had made our prediction in May, and it was there. Most people took it at heart, and some persons also didn't take it at heart. So those who took it at heart obviously benefited from it, and those who did not, obviously we saw their results. So the pension payment was the main issue. After and some of the other issues are not as important, but there is an issue, as I said, when we came to Grenada a couple of weeks ago, we looked at the issue of this transformation. So transformation is still a big idea within the Grenadian public. But especially, as I mentioned, the whole issue with a subset. And these are the subsets are persons from who historically had supported the NNP that migrated to the NDC because of the pension payment and the transformation. So the transformation is still a burning issue in their country. The whole issue of the revamping of government contract workers to permanent workers, that is also an issue. And also the issue of health is also a burning issue. So I think that these are some of the issues that the government, the NDC, should look at, and especially the transformation, the promise of the transformation, they have to start taking very seriously.
Dr. P, I am looking at your analysis here, and this one of your tables that speaks to 20 of the 32 top concerns of Grenadian voters. This is NNP and NDC in 2022. And when I looked at your graph from 2020, it has not significantly changed. Pension is still there, employment creation among the youth is still there, health is still there, healthcare and health insurance, revamping of government contract workers. The other high ones was safety of the country, of course, and so on. So from then to now, the only difference in the new one is the transformation agenda and its development. We have the 2035 strategic thing for the country, strategic paper for the country. But some of us would articulate, and Byron could jump in here as well, that we have not seen any major transformation taking place in the country, whether economically and from other major areas that will impact the people to the point where it is still an area. And when you looked at the recent papers, the local papers, they have spoken to this as well. What can we cite as a major thing for the transformative agenda that was put forward by the NDC that would have put him into power, obviously? Can we pick out 2 or 3 areas, Byron?
Well, health, for example. They have spent $37 million to purchase 96 acres of land that sometime in the future will be
brick and mortar. A facility.
Okay. But also the creative sector.
Yeah.
Right?
The orange.
Yeah, they have articulated that quite well. They've put some money in the banking system, GDB, for financing this sector.
So, Dr. Pierre,
Dr. Pierre, your question. I mean, because Dr. Pierre, you obviously did you did a survey of sort by asking persons on the what was their view on the transformative agenda. But what were you told? What's your sense of more specifics? What they were looking for, and what's their mood when you interviewed them?
Right. So that's good. And as I said, I basically said saying this not because as I'm saying this as a citizen, for example, as a citizen, as someone who obviously I've never voted in Grenada. I'm a Canadian citizen, but as a citizen with children in Grenada, we have to say, hey, we children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, we have to be careful. Okay, so for example, when in the election campaign, the pension of the pension payment was paramount. The also issue of the transformation, doing things differently, the way that things were done, a new way of doing things, a new way of maybe paying the bills, and a new way of interacting with the ministry, a new way, and it's a new life, a new generation. The concept, how it was marketed, was that things will be different when we get elected. Things will be different, and what we did is that we spoke to some persons, as I said, it was a subset. It was a subset of some of the NNP voters, NNP members, diehard card carrying NNP members who voted NDC. And I said there were over 3,000 of them who voted NDC. And you ask them, what has changed? Are you happy in where the things are going on now? And over 50% of them say that no, they're not happy because they're not seeing the transformation. They really voted and had the impression and had the feelings that, hey, something will change. The transformation is coming, okay? And as I said, within when we looked at the transformation, there were 15 elements in the transformation agenda. That issue of poverty eradication and social equity. We had things like sustainable economic development and job creation, the quality of education for all, health improvement, and universal access. We also looked at things like youth unemployment and development, digital transformation and innovation. Always look in terms of the transformation, in terms of climate change, the renewable energy. All of these things, food security, all of this a part of the transformation agenda. It was part of the campaign promises. And as I said, that one of the interesting things is that the the words of the campaign persons, the politicians, are on tape, because when they say these things on in the campaign, it is recorded because it's on social media and it doesn't go on.
Dr. Pierre, but
proceed.
one has to be reasonable. That transformation, it's a process. It takes time. It's not going to be achieved in 2 years or 3 years. It's, Chris, it's a longer period. What they are demonstrating, is that it's a process, and they're making small steps in this particular process.
Yes,
Isn't that
yes.
not reasonable?
Yeah, it is very reasonable. As I said, my specific research was confined to a certain subset.
Yeah.
A certain subset, as
Okay.
I said, these are the
Okay.
card carrying
Yeah.
NNP supporters, because
Yeah.
as I said, we have to know that the NNP has a base, okay, and the NDC has a base. The NDC base is smaller than that of the NNP. So therefore, whatever changes in the political arena from these people, the NNP supporters, can impact the future of any elections in Grenada. So we have to be particularly, concerned about the views of persons who voted for you. So I believe that yes, we know that transformation takes time. At least it takes about 10 years for real true transformation, a minimum of 10 years. But it is a concern of them. They say, hey, we're not seeing things. There is no word on it.
Right, a very
Nobody's
positive
speaking
thing.
about it.
You have determined, Dr. Pierre, that you've talked about, one of your survey picked up the popularity of the Prime Minister. But I just want to
Yes.
rest this there. You can comment on it. But I want to. You could comment on this. Go ahead, Doctor.
Before he comments,
yes.
I want to raise this here, because in one of your graphs, again, I'm speaking about, you compared Dr. Mitchell to Prime Minister Mitchell, and in terms of intelligence, they were almost on par. In terms of ability to speak well, Prime Minister Mitchell outstripped Dr. Mitchell. Eloquence, in terms of what he says, he outstripped Dr. Mitchell again. Popularity and sex appeal, he outstripped them. Trust was a major one where he outstripped Dr. Mitchell. And of course, the patriotic part of it, people felt that Prime Minister Mitchell led in those areas. And I bring up the leadership thing against Byron question, because we're seeing what is not happening in NNP in order Dr. Mitchell transitioning. And I'm wondering, when you look at this profile that you created here and came out in the data, it appears that Prime Minister Mitchell still have a considerable appeal to the young population, in the young people between 18 and 30, and he scores high marks in that group. Do you think, Dr. Pierre, that still obtains against what Byron have also asked?
When you said which Mitchell are you talking about?
Yes. Well, no, I said Prime Minister
Yeah.
Mitchell. Well, yes, which Mitchell?
Okay, Prime Minister, yeah, good, yes. So, right, so we have to look at so what we did is in the survey, we wanted to develop a profile of a leader. What is a profile of a leader in Grenada? What is a normal leader? So we looked at 16 characteristics of a leader in Grenada. So we looked at the 16 characteristics. So we measured the voters, the person in the sample. What's the views on Dr. Mitchell and Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell in intelligence? Okay, obviously, okay. So how educated, how eloquent he was. How is his popularity and sex appeal? Trust, and I said trust was a major issue in that election. Persons felt that Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell was more trustworthy than Dr. Mitchell. Okay, if he says, and person did not believe that if Dr. Mitchell would pay the pension, they did not believe that. Even their supporters, their NNP supporters, also did not believe that. So the trust issue has affected Dr. Keith Mitchell more than he had very negative scores there. However, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell scored very highly in terms of trust. He also scored very highly in terms of popularity and sex appeal. In fact, he was, they had a very good social media campaign. He had, like, there was a suit, if you realize there was a gold suit, the blue suit, got really high ratings. Okay, the whole issue of again, Prime Minister Maurice Bishop, because Grenadian, somehow they like Maurice Bishop, and they felt that Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell reminded them of Maurice Bishop. So he overall, when we tallied all the scores, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell got a total of 15,272, and Dr. Keith Mitchell got a total of 13,016. So we made a conclusion that, hey, this Mr. Deacon Mitchell would have been a better, would most likely he would have been.
Let me just follow up. I just want to follow up on a question here. We observe what is going on now with the NNP in terms of calling for rescue mission and the whole zonal council meetings. In your view, does the NNP have a clear understanding of why they lost the election? But more so, how well are they using data to refine their approach in moving forward, Dr. Pierre?
Right. So this is a very, very important question. In fact, 2 years from the election, 2 years now, I said we had the data, we presented our data before the election. So we found that the persons who are interested, the most interested in our data, they are some elements of the NNP. Okay, some of them, they wanted to know how they went wrong, what could they have done better.
Yeah.
Okay, but obviously I know one from the hierarchy. Let's say Dr. Keith Mitchell has not really, had a meeting with me to discuss the data. However, other persons from the NNP have reached out with regard to the NDC. No one has really reached out to me to say, hey, Dr. Pierre, you did an analysis. Let's have a discussion with you. Let's see what you have done. How could we learn from it? And this I find is very interesting. In that his first time analysis was done about in that way, and none of the political leaders in a sense reach out to us to say, hey, let's see how it was done. I think, and I felt that is
But of course, they will have to pay for this service, Dr. Pierre.
Well, not really, actually. As a citizen, okay, I'm a citizen. It's not necessary. You don't have to pay for it. Okay, but because what we want to do is that my goal as a statistician, my goal as a researcher, is to make, especially the voting population. We need to know more about our voters. If you look at the election parliamentary, office, if you look at their analysis, their report of the election, it's too descriptive. Okay, you do not get enough information. There is no cross tabulation. There is no kind of regression analysis. There is nothing to read that we can learn from the report. So that has to change. We need to get better report. The same software that they use in the United States could be used here. Okay, same software they use. So we want to know how many persons who drive a car voted for the NNP or the NDC. How many college-educated persons voted for the NNP or the NDC? We need the Parliamentary Election Office need to conduct constant survey to know the people. Okay, how many persons who voted for the NDC or the NNP has a child abroad studying in university? All that type of data is needed. Okay,
So-
the migratory patterns of NDC work persons versus NNP.
So,
and
Doc-
all these
Dr.
things
Pe-
we try to collect.
Dr. Pierre, question here for you. Dr. Mitchell is a statistician, has his PhD
Yes.
along those lines. And here we have Prime Minister Mitchell, Dickon Mitchell, not being a statistician, he's legally trained. So I don't believe his concept of stats and regression analysis and those heavy maths is his forte. However, here it is, you're saying none of them have reached out to you to understand the nitty-gritty of how things may have changed from 2020 to now, 22, and where are the pitfalls and the weaknesses that need to be looked at. And there are insinuations in the public sphere in Grenada through the papers and so on that NDC as a party is weak in terms of political organization on the ground compared to NNP. And the question is there a threat here that exists for when the next election is called if they don't get the house in order, so to speak, as it relates to that? Because based on your analysis, the base for NNP have not changed. It still remains among working class and people in that area, whereas for NDC it is primarily with the more intelligent part of the community that we live in. So understanding that has not changed, what in your view, seeing that none of them have reached out to you, is going to put the parties at risk when the next election cycle comes?
Right. That's a very good point, okay? And yes, and this is the concern I have. Okay, as I said, in the papers I mentioned that I met one of the leaders of the NDC. And I want to kind of speak to him, and what I realized is that people, the leaders of they don't have an understanding of this whole election stuff. They do not see, they do not, in terms of the analytics, okay? They do not understand the analytics, what goes on in terms of the election. They make information not by data. They do not make a decision. There's a lack of data for decision making, okay? So what I'm saying, for example, if you look, when the election came out, we sent a report. We said, hey, what the NDC should do. The NDC should, after election, Prime Minister wins the election. Okay, we've said that, hey, what the NDC should do. The NDC should never stop campaigning. There is 6 months to 9 months after the success of the election. There is a period of in politics what is called voter conversion. So they had a high voter conversion rate. So what they should have done, still go on the ground, still campaign, bring Mr. Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell around the country because people said in the survey that they want to see him, they want to touch him. So they should have bring him around to let him meet the people. They have not done that. In 9 months, a year, they have not done that. Also, if you look at some of the political parties, the zones, the NNP, the NDC strongholds, there's nothing really there. There's no activity, as though they went to sleep. Okay, as though they went to sleep, and this is of concern to me as a citizen and to the general public, because the NDC has. Even though they won the election, they did it on the popularity of their leader, Mr. Dickon Mitchell. He's very popular. His likability rating is 80-something%, very high. He's, as I said, high sex appeal. He's eloquent. He's very believable. When you hear him speak, you must stop to listen. And this is something that is rare.
Dr.
So
Pierre,
what they should have done,
Dr. Pierre, the question of, I want to talk to you about with the social media growing role, how do you think social media trends are influencing voters' opinions? Do these online discussions truly reflect on the ground sentiments? And what have you observed with social media in Grenada? Who are the main influencers that you've seen here?
Well, listen, social media plays a big part in the 2020 election. Okay, in the Turks and Caicos, the ruling party got wiped out. You must look at social media. Social media has to be very, very important. The NDC and also the NNP, they must be aware of the social media. They must collect data. And as we see, in my opinion, none of them is collecting data. Then I believe that could be wrong. The NDC may not be collecting data, and also does the NNP, because they do not know what is going around. Okay, and I feel that the Facebook and some of these other agencies, they must. You have to be in contact with them to know what the analytics, because Facebook and Instagram and all these areas, they have information that can be used to help us. Because as I said, close to 50,000-60,000 persons use on Facebook every day, and there are certain influencers in Grenada who can influence voters, and these parties should be cognizant of that.
So, Doc, I want to come back to your analysis. And when I looked at age band and voters, NNP and NDC would have scored highest between 20 to 29 group, whereas the NNP would have scored highest in the 30 to 39 and 60 and above. So,
yes,
the issue here is the base for the NNP versus the NDC seems to be consistent. NDC would have gotten, as you say, the 3,000 NNP people that would have voted, and the young people. Hence the question of social media and its impact on the influencers. So my question to you is, if on the assumption that base combination have not changed, and the leaders are not listening to how your studies and what you're doing in terms of the surveys and how the information is being changed now, what is the expectation in your view of the next election cycle? Where do you think NNP or NDC will lead, knowing that the differences in quality of leadership of the both parties?
Right. So yes. So what we see is that people in Grenada, we vote based on tradition. So if my mother is an NNP, I might be an NNP. My children might be NNP. If my father is an NDC, I might be an NDC, and so on. But what we've seen in the trends, because of social media, the younger persons are more influenced in social media than the parents. So what we have seen, for example, in the last election was that we had young people who traditionally, parents who voted for NNP, they ended up voting for the NDC because of social media, because of what we say. There are a lot of influencers in Grenada, and obviously they're one of their biggest influencer in Grenada is the Ashida. That's her. She is one of the biggest influencer, and in my report, what I said is that the NDC must do something about this lady. They have to do something. Also, the NNP must do something about this lady. She has about 40,000 followers, and she is influential. As I said, my experience, how I managed to speak to her. We have a group. I found that we have a bot on her, so we follow her, and her popularity is just way above their she's been very popular. So I interviewed her, even though I was advised not to interview her because she's maybe crazy, she's this, she's that. I said, let me interview her. When I interviewed her, I was surprised. She's very eloquent, she's very intelligent, she is smart, she's witty, she's a very good command of the English language. And what is important is that she uses both the three dialects in Grenada very well. She can speak the Grenadian patois. She can speak standard English. She can speak broken English. She has a lot of intuition. So she's very, she's attractive. She has more followers than the Prime Minister.
Doc,
So
we-
if I was a political party,
Yeah.
I would have bring her to the table.
Yeah.
We need to bring her to the table. Both the NNP and the NDC should try to see she could bring her to the table. Also, Kem Jones again. Kem Jones again is very popular. So and he also has a side. But the social media persons, the influencers, should be a part of the political.
Thank you,
campaign.
Dr. Pierre.
And the
Dr. Pierre, we are running out of time, but my final question is, based on trends, what kind of projection you will make at this point for a future election in Grenada? And your closing remarks here.
Okay, so right, very good. So if a future election is called in Grenada, I think that, as I said, it will be maybe too close to call. Okay, one reason why is that from my analysis, there are three NDC constituencies that have kind of are cause for concern. Okay, and so the NDC has to do a lot of work, because as we said, that if every NNP person votes and if every NDC person votes, it will be difficult for the NDC to win, because the NDC has a larger voter base than the NNP has a larger voter base than the NDC. So the NDC needs the support of the NNP's voters to switch, and they have to look at the greatest enemy of both the NNP and the NDC. And the greatest enemy of the NNP and the NDC are the non-voters, the 26% of persons who does not vote. They are Rastas, they're fishermen, they're people from their religious group, they're farmers, the taxi drivers, some of these people who do not vote. So you have to be very careful. So, and you have to look at them, and they have to do their work. They have to reach out to the new voters, the persons who live in school. Nobody's really doing that effectively. Imagine persons leaving GBSS and high school and secondary school, going to the Interterm CC. No one is collecting data. And that's the saddest thing about that. So I said, too close to call, and it's challenging. It is looking challenging for the NDC, because Dr. Keith Mitchell and the NNP is still in chaos in terms of its leadership.
Do you think he's going to
And that
step
is the
down,
challenge.
Dr. Pierre? Do you think he will step down? What's your projection, Dr. Mitchell? Do you think he will step down his leadership? What's your bet here?
Listen. This is not what I'm telling you is not scientific. So
No.
I made
Yes,
a
yeah.
bet with a person. I made a bet with a person and won. Okay.
Okay.
So I said that Dr. Mitchell will not step down. He's going to, he will not step down.
Okay, I'm gonna
Because,
take that bet with you. I bet you he steps down.
Okay, well, I hope so. I want him.
We'll
want
talk
to do
about
this.
the reward after the program. Okay, what I would earn when you lose. Okay,
Yes.
Dr. Pierre, thank you very much for being our guest. We hope to have you again soon, and thank you, and have a good evening. Chris, any
Thank you
closing
very
comment?
much.
No, I think we have a lot to chew on as we
Yeah.
go forward.
Yeah.
A lot of areas were mentioned, so I think the parties have a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely. Viewers, thank you again, Dr. Pierre. Thanks for being there. Viewers, thank you wherever you are, whichever medium you're looking at us at. And of course, we want to recognize our technical staff, MTV. Have a good evening. We'll see you next week, same time. Bye-bye.
It's time to lace up, Grenada. The 25th Grenadian General Insurance Half Marathon and 10K is back, happening on Sunday, November 17th, starting at 2 p.m. Feel the adrenaline rush from Corinth St. David's all the way to the Kirani James Athletic Stadium. 10K starts in Woodlands for participants under the age of 15, with monetary prizes up for grabs for the top 10 male and female finishers in the half marathon and the top 5 male and female finishers in the 10K, plus a special prize for the oldest finisher and special cash prize for the school or club or organization with the most finishers. And don't worry, we've got you covered with transportation provided. Ready to race? Let's hit the road! Sunday, November 17th. Register now and be part of Grenada's biggest race event of the year.
This holiday season, Blast is bringing you the biggest celebration of the year. Merry Blastmas and a happy new win! Merry Blastmas play today, cash prize one spin away. Brand new car, a dream come true, trick stays and vouchers for you. Play at Blast and scan your QR code for a chance to win amazing prizes. Merry Blastmas, make it fun, happy new win for everyone. Visit Blast Gaming now. Merry Blastmas and a happy new win. You must be 18 and over.